Hello and welcome to SpeakEasy. Today we are recording in Aligarh with none other than Professor Irfan Habib, long-time Professor of History at the Aligarh Muslim University, former Chairman of the Indian Council of Historical Research, and long-time interest in politics and history of the country. Welcome to SpeakEasy, Professor Habib, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
talking to us.
Thank you.
Professor Habib, I want to begin by asking you a very basic question which all students must have asked for you. And like a student, I want to ask you, how important is it to understand the past to comprehend the present?
Well, first of all, the boundary lines between past and present are always blurred because certain movements are in continuation. Some are long past, but their effects still linger. So, past is always important uh, for a student of human progress to study the past and not only not to glorify it, but to understand the major movements of thought and conduct. For this, of course, historians need, for all periods, all kinds of evidence. And as one goes back, generally the evidence gets smaller and smaller. And it's not for, if you go to Ashoka's time, it's not for you to select, but for Ashoka's inscriptions to have survived and to have been read later. Many historians in practice begin Indian history with Ashoka's time because the written materials, as far as we can read them, survive from that time. Indus civilization script is there, but since it can't be broken, it hasn't been broken satisfactorily. Therefore, written history still starts from Ashoka's time and Ashoka's edicts, which are an achievement only of India's past, but of the world's past. I mean, Ashokan inscriptions are really unique, both because they are written and also because of their language and finally of their content. So, R.G. Bhandarkar, for example, started his history with Ashoka's inscriptions, not with coming of Aryans or Indus civilization, because probably he believed that it is from Ashokan inscriptions that a written history of India starts.
So, you refer to glorification of the past as opposed to understanding. We see that a lot in India also, the idea of projecting a Hindu India, a single god, a single book, that kind of approach. So, how harmful is that to the actual study of history?
Well, one can't exclude every presumption, but I think one has to restrict presumptions as far as possible. Of course, one presumes that the human race originated from one place. It's a presumption, but unless you act on this presumption, you can't really rebuild the history of mankind. So, history does have its presumptions, which must be reduced to the very minimum, of course, but you can't do without them. And in Indian history, the problem is that texts that we can read begin from Ashoka's time, roughly. Earlier texts, like the Indus script, have not been satisfactorily deciphered. I mean, there have been claims, but there have been counterclaims as well. So, archaeology is our major source before Ashokan inscriptions introduced writing. Within medieval India, there is the further fact that history becomes a branch of knowledge as recognized Tariq, which unfortunately is not the case in ancient India. You don't have for ancient India histories like you have in Persian for medieval India. And then, of course, the range of documents extends as you come nearer. With Mughal times, the number of documents is so enormous that you can't really manage all of them. You have to be selective. And then, of course, modern times, when memoirs and newspapers and so on of earlier times become your main sources. So, the science of history has to do with different periods, with different kinds of sources. And as you come nearer, the sources become so huge that no one can actually deal with the whole material. You can be very selective. You can be have to be selective.
So, what would you say when you started studying history? You went to do your PhD in Oxford, and then you had almost 4 decades as a professor at Aligarh Muslim University. You stayed very much put in Aligarh. What do you think is how have our historians approaching the craft differently now?
Well, of course, it depends on periods and sources. For instance, I started my study of history with Ashokan inscriptions. My father had 2 volumes of them. So, and I came to Mughal period later. But with the Mughal period, the advantage is that there is evidence on almost every section of society, and one is not limited by the scarcity of evidence as one is for ancient India. You don't know how far valid is Manusmriti, for example. Did what Manusmriti dictates really prevail? It's very difficult to say, because the only other source of evidence is inscriptions, and they by their very nature only cover limited areas. Whereas for Mughal times or even Sultanate times, you have enormous manuscript evidence of all kinds. It's of course you have to know Persian, and you have to read Shikast and so forth. That is all, but the evidence is there. So historians have to deal with different kinds of periods, with different kinds of evidence. And, without, for instance, knowing Persian and Shikast, it's very difficult to work in Mughal times, because even Brahmins and Pandits used to have their daily diary in Persian, often in Shikast, very rarely in Hindvi or Hindi dialects. Very much like the present day, where English is the major language of use, not any Indian language except for the region.
So to move, Professor Habib, to slightly more contemporary times, I attended your delightful lecture, this first Sitaram Yechuri Memorial Lecture, which you delivered in Delhi last year, in which you very candidly looked at the failure of the left to make a distinction between the Muslim League as a communal organization and the Indian National Congress as a nationalist organization. And you really said it was an enormous error on the part of the Indian left or the communist parties to make this comparison. I want to take that thought a little further and ask you, from the standpoint of Hindu-Muslim relations, what do you think was the contribution of Gandhiji?
Well, I don't think anyone can say except that it was enormous. And I read somewhere that when Gandhiji was assassinated and Jinnah sent a message, the greatest Hindu is dead. It was I mean, it was a message that I, I was I was just an adult at that time. I think I felt was insulting. I read later that Jinnah was very sorry after sending it. He said Gandhi was not a Hindu, he was a man. Why did I write Hindu? He was the greatest of us. That I read in a biography of his, Jinnah's. So Gandhi was, such people are born perhaps in ages, once in ages.
And the left's appraisal of him, or his view, or their view of him, what I mean,
Well, the left appraisal was mostly what was contained in R.P. Dutt's India Today. R.P. Dutt made fun of Mahatma Gandhi. He later on, I think, said in an article that it was a mistake. I don't know, I can now vouch if, but I feel that he did say that he went too far in criticizing Gandhi. My own family and my father were Congress people, not communists. And my father particularly was close to Nehru. Not in any personal sense, but Nehru used
ideologically.
to, and money. My father used to donate money
Donate,
regularly.
you mean donations?
Donate,
Yeah.
or when Nehru sent a letter that this student needs help, give him some money. Then, so that was the kind of relationship.
So Gandhiji's role, I mean, you said, he was probably, rare being to be born. I mean, if you look, I mean, it's an unfair question for me to ask you, but had Gandhi lived a little longer, maybe another decade, do you think the course of Hindu-Muslim relations as we see them today could have been different?
Well, I just can't say what could have happened. Gandhi was a very bold person, undoubtedly. He didn't think any Muslim mob could attack him. In Lahore, even Nehru faced a Muslim mob, and when the Muslims realized that in front of them stood Nehru, then they all went back crying, Pandit Nehru is here, Pandit Nehru is here, go back home. So Liaquat Ali Khan wrote at that time that I was afraid and I wanted to stop Pandit Nehru from jumping out of the car and facing the mob. But I didn't realize that the mob would melt away when they saw Nehru. That was a Muslim mob in Lahore. So those people were different. I mean, this very incident shows that a Muslim mob is stopped by the very person whom they are presumably out to kill, because he stands before them. So such people are not born every day.
And Professor Saab, you took Jawaharlal Nehru's name also. We've seen, especially since 2014, I'm not talking about the Mr. Vajpayee's government now. We treat it a little differently from the Modi government, which has been in power since 2014. Why is it that the right wing Hindu brigade really loves to hate Nehru? What is in Nehru that brings out this kind of criticism, this kind of anger? Why is that directed at Jawaharlal Nehru?
Well, don't forget that their poison against Gandhi was very strong equally until Gandhiji's martyrdom made it difficult for them now to condemn him. But I was at that time, and I mean the abuses they were showering at Gandhi in public speeches here were remarkable. Except that even at the worst of times, Nehru got audiences which BJP could never get. So the fact that Nehru and Gandhi were freedom fighters and had made India free, that counted with the Indian public at that time. It no longer counts now, I think. We are used to independence. But 40 years, 50 years, it was the major thing. Have you stood up to the English? And Hindu Mahasabha was nowhere in the field,
Or the RSS for that matter?
or the RSS.
So, to assess, and it's clear that Gandhi and Nehru had a great chemistry together. I mean, there's no doubt from whatever accounts, at least I've seen. And that kind of equation is also very rare to have in politics.
That's true.
And you must have seen it as a young man quite closely.
My father was in the Congress. He was a big member of the council also from the Congress party for some time. And actually, Nehru came to our house twice or thrice. Once, just in order to have
The same house where we are sitting?
Yes.
Yeah? Which was built, as you were telling me, in 1931.
31.
The year of your birth also.
So the last time he came was early in 42, where the Congress had invited him. He had begun speaking, and then they forgot about his lunch. So he came and he shouted from here, Habib, Habib, get me some sandwiches.
So the same house that
This door
yeah.
for afternoon.
So to return to the question, why do they love to hate Nehru? I mean, or was it Nehru's westernized, approach? Was it his confidence? What was it in Nehru that they
Nehru knew English very well, but to call him westernized is certain. Gandhi wrote English very well, but you don't call him westernized.
because of his dress, maybe?
No, but Nehru also dressed the same way in Gandhi cap and
Yeah.
khadi all
Yeah.
the time. Well, his rationalism, his bravery. He came to Aligarh despite threats from Jain. Then they had shot Nehru, Gandhi. So it was not an easy matter, but he came on car, sometimes accompanied by a police officer, sometimes just alone.
So you mean when he came here, there was no police tamjam, nothing?
No.
Nothing.
Nothing. In fact, the collector complained that he had to ring up the registrar of the AMU to find out where Nehru is.
So those were the days.
Because Nehru had made, according to as the collector told my father, according to the rules at that time, if Nehru was going anywhere, the collector had to be informed and he had to arrange for security. But but in actual practice, Nehru failed to inform the collector.
So how many times do you think Nehruji visited this house of yours?
No, this house once.
Once. So, Professor Habib, tell us, when independence came in 1947, you were very much in Aligarh. You must have been 15, 16 years old. So, do you have any memories of that day, of that time? Please share those with us.
No, flags went up everywhere. The tricolor, and the celebrations were without any hostility between Hindus or Muslims. That was one important thing.
So, they were united in their celebration.
Yes, everyone put the flag. Muslims sometimes put the flag with the green band on the top, not the saffron. But that was the only difference sometimes. Of course, Muslims had been before that putting up the Muslim League flag, which was all green. But now they shifted to the color.
So that day, do you have any memories of where you were, or
Yes, we celebrated. We put up the flag. But 2 days later, the government announced that all flags should be removed unless they were official buildings. Right. So we removed after 2 days.
And tell us, Professor Habib, what role we see troubles in the subcontinent, not just in India. We see them in Pakistan, we see them in Bangladesh, we see them in Sri Lanka also. Do you think that the partition of India, did this have a long-lasting impact? Are we seeing its impact still in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, in its politics even today?
Well, that's true, but with Muslim League almost getting 90% Muslim vote, even in areas which could not go to Pakistan, like Madras Presidency or UP, partition was inevitable. Even today, UP Muslims constitute a very influential body in Pakistan, where they are otherwise in a minority, absolute minority. But in fact, when I went to Karachi, several Sindhi people told me that we are UP governed. We are not actually Pakistan.
But the politics of the subcontinent, I mean, do you think that, say, the division between Hindus and Muslims, for instance, does it have its roots in partition, or does it have its roots in the British colonial approach to Hindus and Muslims?
Well, probably it happens because of the religious difference itself. Hindu-Muslim disputes have an older history than British rule. So you can't just say that they were British created. Temple destruction is, and in some mosques, idols are also put. So this religious difference is there. It's a historical one. To blame the British for it is, I think,
Unfair.
not unfair but untrue.
But they did use these differences to strengthen their rule. Is that not the case?
I don't think they took it seriously.
Right. Right.
I mean, the British government was so strong and powerful that only in mutiny, but mutiny Hindus and Muslims were together, and it is after that that the British began to frame policies, sometimes anti-Muslim, sometimes anti-Hindu. Ultimately, they shifted to a pro-Muslim policy in order to oppose the Congress.
And build a base for themselves, perhaps.
Build allies,
Allies.
which Muslim League was certainly in practice.
When you see the current dispensation in power in Delhi and taking a very pro-Hindu approach, how do you respond to that in today's India?
Today's India, pro-Hindu reproach has not much significance. How far could you go? You are already 10%.
So you're already 80%.
Yes, I
Yeah.
mean 80%, more than 80%. And Muslims hardly matter, even from the voters. Of course, there are some areas where Muslim vote matters, Bengal, West Bengal, and West UP. So parties like Congress and Samajwadi gain from them. But the Hindu vote is so overwhelming that BJP can live with that.
And Professor Habib, to sort of broaden our discussion to look at the globe, we see Donald Trump in power in the United States. We have Erdogan in Turkey. We have globally the rise of, right-wing, populist,
Half
some say
mad, half mad.
half-mad, fascist rulers. I mean, as a historian, who's, looked at this for maybe 70, 75 years, how would you, place this phenomena before our viewers? I mean, you spent your life
No,
research.
long ago, I read a constitutional history of the United States. And after I reached the middle pages, I realized that this is not a real study, but a humorous take on the United States.
So, will we have to live with these right-wing leaders globally?
It's not only simply right wing, it's a question of rectitude. That a person with such a past in his biography should still be elected President of the United States is amazing. Really amazing. I don't think it was possible. It would have been possible 30 or 40 years ago.
So, standards are slipping everywhere, or expectations from leaders.
Or bribery is no longer regarded as a thing to avoid. If it gets you something, why not?
And that seems to be a global phenomena.
Well, I don't know, but America certainly, when the whole his biography was available, and anyone could see that he himself had admitted bribery, and yet thing happens.
Well, on that note, Professor Habib,
You're right.
thank you so much for talking to SpeakEasy and Frontline. I know we've really bothered you by coming
No,
here,
not so.
but
It's your
thank
most
you so
welcome.
much for sharing your thoughts and your sharp views on the state of India and the world. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.